Well, what's up, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of We Rise Fighting. This time around, we are getting a report back from the Labor Notes Conference from Jerry, who was lucky enough to attend. As always, this is Brian, Jerry, and Rick reporting to you. And honestly, we're just going to dive right into it because I'm excited. We haven't talked yet. He hasn't debriefed with Brian and I, so we're going to learn on the fly, man. So, Jerry, tell us anything, everything. How was the Labor Notes Conference?
The Labor Notes Conference was a shot in the arm for anybody that's been hoping and waiting for an upsurge in the labor movement that might portend a shift and a very meaningful one in this historical period we're in. And I don't use the word historic loosely in this sense because there are some developments there are concurring organizing developments that many of us are already aware of with Starbucks and Amazon. Um, there are others that all sort of vectored into the many workshops and the mass meetings that happened at Labor Notes, in a sense, sort of underwriting, giving great credence and explosive vitality to those movements, so that when people left, they were on a high. I mean, it was virtually impossible for me not to walk too far without running into somebody I knew or who knew me or I didn't know, but I could just talk to anybody, and automatically you were talking to a rank and file union member or organizer who knew what the fuck you were talking about, because we all know what's going on right now, pretty much. If you were at that conference, you know what's going on. And so you were in touch with 4,000 other people who knew what was going on. And so all the networks, spinning out of control. It was overwhelming, is what I'm trying to say. I just want to characterize it, and then I want to get to some of the nitty gritty and important events that happened.
Yeah, that sounds cool. And also, you know what? I also think it would be worthwhile for our listeners, in case you're not familiar with Labor Notes or the Labor Notes Conference. Labor Notes is a magazine. It was started in Detroit, Michigan. And the whole point of the magazine was to, quote, put the movement back in the labor movement, unquote. And a lot of their articles over time, a lot of their books over time have concerned with themselves with things like union democracy, rank and file militancy, how to organize strikes. So again, putting the movement back into the labor movement. And the Labor Notes Conference happens what now? Every 2 years? Every 2 years. And I think it's just in Chicago now. When I had the pleasure of going was, good Lord, I think it was like 2004, six, something like that, and that was still in Detroit. So I know I got moved to Chicago at one point because it started growing. So what it is, in essence, is trade unionists from around the world converging and talking about trade union issues. And within those trade unionists, you have folks who are just, rank and file, interested in the next contract, how to get better language, better wages in the contract, all the way to people who have a vision for a better world outside of capitalism. So that's what Jerry's reporting back on. The conference just happened this past weekend. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to hear all that already, Jerry.
Yeah, just in my ordinary peramblings, I ran into trade unions from Great Britain. There were four of them from the Communist Party in Great Britain that I happened to run into. There was a woman from Nigeria, and there were some Canadians. That was just people I bumped. I was standing in line for coffee, and you talk to people, and that's whom I happened to meet.
That's so
I
cool.
didn't go to any of the workshops that touched upon international issues. So, and there were more there. There were four or five of those.
Which workshops did you go to, Jerry?
Let's see. I went to Fighting Apathy, actually. I didn't go to too many. I went to Fighting Apathy. I went to the mass meetings, and I did a lot of networking. And then I was in a workshop that I presented in. So I think. Oh, and I went to Organizing for Mental Health, uh, uh, which was put on by the National Union of Healthcare Workers, the union that created itself after SEIU trusteed Local 250 in the Bay Area and tried to turn it into a corporate union, which is what SEIU often does. Excuse me, SEIU. I hope you're not offended, but you know what the truth is.
I'll take it as a compliment.
Sal Roselli, the president, spoke there of that union. A longtime confidant of Howard Wallace and Harvey Milk on the Bay Area that will pop up in my slideshow that we're going to reference later. So those are the ones I went to.
Yeah.
Well, well, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I was just going to ask one takeaway from the apathy one, and I guess I have a second question. What was the nature of the mass meetings?
Well, they approached a religious revival. I think especially the one on Friday night, because there was this one guy behind me, like maybe 2,000 people in the hall for that one. And there's this guy behind me every time Sarah Nelson or Sean O'Brien or Chris Small said something that he liked, to go woo woo. I mean, it was people's joy could not be contained. That kind of thing. So then there was a mass outdoor meeting at Local 704 Teamsters on Thursday night that was featured Sarah Nelson, the airline stewardess's president, who absolutely killed it. Invoked Mother Jones, and she talked about the desirability of a general strike, not once, but twice.
Yeah.
And the new president of the Chicago Teachers Union, who succeeded Karen Lewis, whose name escapes me at the moment, spoke. There were people walking around with T-shirts with this new president's picture on it already. I mean, she just got office. Then Sean O'Brien, the new international president of the Teamsters, spoke, comes out of Local 25 here in Boston. And he gave his usual fighting militant speech, which clearly, and with the backing of the Teamsters for Democratic Union, which is now fully in with Sean O'Brien, they have a powerful militant character now, the Teamsters. And, I mean, his speeches are all about that. We're going to fight it. We're going to take it to them. He calls them the white collar criminal syndicates. That is his latest phrase for Bezos and the rest of them. And very fighting militant class struggle speech. And then Bernie Sanders spoke after that. This is all in this one outdoor rally. One can interpret that as one might in terms of the larger political positioning of the Democratic Party, and especially around the war in Ukraine, and what Bernie Sanders, who is for the war, may have to say about it, although he didn't say anything about it in that speech, and his loyal DSA followers, who are much in evidence there. So that was just Thursday night before the conference really even got started.
Damn. That's a lot going on.
And Friday night, there was the big mass meeting in the grand ballroom of the Hyatt Regency, and there were maybe a couple of thousand people in there. And it was the same speaking lineup, except Sarah was not there. But who was there was Chris Smalls. You got the biggest ovation of the whole shebang, bar none.
Good.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little, and for our listeners too, Chris Smalls is one of the main organizers from the Amazon unionization drive on Staten Island. And that's one of the first facilities of Amazon that has been organized. So, it's pretty exciting that he was there. Do you, any takeaways from what he said, or please tell us?
Well, he talked about the rank and file character of the organizing drive there. And both at that event and the night before his Teamster Union rally event, Sean O'Brien was like by his side. And as you probably already know, has offered all the support that the Teamsters can give him. It's hard for me. I didn't take notes when he was speaking. I just wanted to listen to what he said. So I don't remember exactly what he said, but that Chris Smalls is a worker who was fired by Amazon and took it upon himself to organize all the, I think, 2,000 workers there by so-called unconventional means. Unconventional these days is rank and file organizing, and he, no, I don't want to go into how he organized Amazon, but for this, he petitioned with 30%, which is the minimum you can petition for a union, and he won by not a great amount, but he won. Anyway, so as I say, he got the biggest ovation, and that sort of triumvirate of Sarah Nelson, Chris Smalls, and Sean O'Brien was sort of like hovering like this divine trinity over the whole conference, and sort of like welcoming it, getting everybody's expectations and hope whooped up. Okay, so that's why people left. That's what people left with, including myself. And it's Starbucks. Starbucks was very much in evidence there. They had at least 3 big workshops. They had like they called it a workshop. It was like a mass meeting, okay, like 200 or 300 people in a big gigantic room.
Oh wow!
And they had like on the dais, the front table was like, I think 8 of their lead rank and file organizers, 7 of whom were like in their mid to low 20s of age. Okay.
Yeah.
And they are right now, they're like a steamroller. And I would sort of characterize that this way by giving you a little bulletin from, I guess I can do this. I don't know. Maybe, when are we broadcasting? Maybe I better hold it back because I think it's not public knowledge yet. But let me say this. If you're familiar with the flying squadrons from the 1930s, when textile workers went on strike in a mill and went to the next mill and called out all those workers to go on strike, and they all piled into cars, sometimes 50 cars in a caravan. It would fan out to other mills from Maine to South Carolina, and call out all the workers in those mills. Well, that's a preview. I don't want to say much more about it.
All right, no, we'll hold it there. But yeah, that sounds cool, man. No, the Starbucks stuff is really inspiring for that reason. So many people in their 20s, a lot of young workers involved in that.
They have rank and file workers teaching other rank and file workers how to file unfair labor practice charges.
Oh wow.
They're organizing now probably 5 stores a day. Here in just eastern Massachusetts, east of Worcester, we have 18 stores. 8 of which are entering contract negotiations, and 9 of which have just won their elections, with a whole bunch more in the pipeline, signing cards. So those events, Starbucks, Amazon, it is lifting expectations, and we'll see what happens. I've talked to other experienced organizers, and they're defining it as an upsurge. And it may be too early to. We have to wait and see what happens, because the Starbucks work is going to get much more difficult. Just the other day, the lead organizer here in our part of the state sent out an email. Starbucks is now threatening trans workers by suggesting that that the union will not be able to guarantee that they will be able to keep their healthcare rights such as they are, which do give trans healthcare benefits. This is a typical anti-union strategy, where when you're organizing and when you're in contract negotiations, they will say everything, everything is frozen. You don't know what's going to happen. The union can't do this, union can't do that. It's a lot of bullshit. because I believe I'm on solid legal ground when I say that once you're certified as a union and you are in the negotiating process, management cannot arbitrarily impose new conditions. They can lay people off. They always can do that. They can do management rights kinds of things, but they can't take your health insurance away. They can't do things like they can't impose new conditions of work. So anyway, we got a lot of work ahead of us. I'll just end by saying that we're rolling out an Adopt a Store campaign. I believe it's going to go national on where we're lining up unions and AFL-CIO constituency groups to adopt a store and organize a group of people to go in there, buy a coffee. Can I have a Union Strong coffee, please? Leave a big tip, and then find out what other practical supports these workers need to fortify them over the next year, because there's a lot of turnover in Amazon in Starbucks. It's like the Amazon effect. It's not good for union organizing to have a big turnover. So I guess that's some of the headlines that I have, and we'll see what happens. It's all up to us to organize now.
So, Jerry, a question I had for you is that there's a vote for $55 billion more for the U.S. war on Ukraine. The Pentagon budget is $800 and some billion, and Biden is even calling for more for that. And you and a few of your friends brought a petition and some information about Ukraine and the role of U.S. labor on that. What was your response? Can you explain a little bit what that was in the response to it?
Very interesting. I was circulating a petition, U.S. Labor Committee Against U.S. War in Ukraine, which is an ad hoc group of veteran union organizers and members. When I say veteran, I mean decades. We all have decades in the movement. And I circulated among the different information tables that were around. And one of my friends who was circulating a petition got strong-armed by the Labor Notes folks and pushed him away, told him he could not pass out flyers at the entrance of a big event. So I worked one-on-one as much as I could, and I hit all the tables. And there's 6 or 7 flavors of labor response to the Ukraine war, ranging from the Joe Biden, let's go and have an unending war with no end in sight, with a blank checkbook that might end in a nuclear explosion, and that is more important than not having enough baby formula for children. There's that end of it. The other end is stop the damn war, period, because it's wrongfully organized. It's wrongfully called. It is not a war for democracy. It is a war to extend the reach of NATO and the Western powers as they head to complete their campaign, starting with the Eastern European countries that used to be part of the Warsaw Pact, taking away communism and socialism and turning them into free labor markets, and heading east, to Ukraine and Russia, and maybe who knows as far as we. So those are the 2 poles, and in between, I don't know how much you want me to go into this.
That's fine. I was just looking for the response.
Yeah, well, I got actually one unambiguous support from all the parties and tendencies that were out there, from a small socialist party. But I got people to sign up, individuals that I ran into, including those 4 British communist teachers, and just other. There is more support to stop this war, period, than we may appreciate.
Yeah, it's true. Especially as we described in our previous episode about Asia, Latin America, and Africa. There's a lot of differences to the U.S. and Africa in particular. I think we discussed previously. You mentioned education. I just have a couple more questions for myself about the conference. One is, really Chicago has been a center and really a shining light for education workers, a hugely important sector, along with the transportation sectors you already mentioned, and just since 2012 in particular, but of course before that, but with the Chicago teacher strike that launched in 12, Chicago has really been a center of this activity across the country that we've seen for education workers in the last 10 years. I just have a couple of questions about, the presence of education workers there at the conference and how that went and what some of their ideas might be about fighting back and moving forward.
Well, I didn't happen to go to any of those workshops. The most I can respond to you, Brian, is that, and I regret that I can't recall her name at the moment, but the new president of the Chicago Teachers Union is, like the daughter of Karen Lewis, so to speak. She's very militant, but I didn't happen to go to any of those workshops. I really can't be as responsive as I'd like to be on that particular part of it. Sorry.
Okay. And how'd your workshop go?
It was.
What was it? How did it go?
The workshop was on queer labor history. I presented along with Annabelle Heckler, who is a cartoonist who has drawn those labor history things that you may have seen, comic books,
mm-hmm.
and two folks who are rank and file organizers in the middle of a big campaign for 500 workers at the local Howard Brown Health Clinic in Chicago. African-American woman and a trans woman, white trans woman, both rank and file workers on that campaign. And in preparation for that workshop, we were unclear, how is this going to hold together? We have two historical people and then we have this thing. It just worked out really perfectly. 65 people came to it. It was like a regular classroom and people were sitting in the hallway. And let's see, my presentation, Queer Labor History, is one that I given before. What can I say? I think it did, judging from the people who came up to me when it was over, asking me for copies of it. It was a slideshow presentation. I think it was successful. I got to share my personal story of, shall we say, violent interactions I've had with the labor movement as a gay man. I got to share them in front of this big crowd. But the audience was just many young people there. And where I'm still rolling off that now. I've got a 65-person mailing list now that sign-up sheet that I'm trying to do something with, if I can find the time to enter all the names into an Excel spreadsheet. But it's interesting because the workshop towards the end turned into an organizing committee meeting for the two rank and file workers, because there were people in the audience, it turns out, who happened to go to that clinic for services, right? Rank and file union members in other unions. So three of them offered their support. So that's how the workshop ended. It ended up as an organizing meeting for these two works. And I got to say that's how queer is organized. We just jump right to it because we're united in our oppression and we're united in our fight back. And there's a natural inclination to organize out of that. When you get 65 of us in a room, look out. So it was really dynamite, really dynamite.
Yeah, right on.
All the bathrooms were gender, correct.
Absolutely, that's great. I might have. Sorry to. I don't know if I interrupted you before, Rick. If you had a question. Sorry
Oh
about that.
no, not not at all. I also wanted to listen in on that too. But I got curious too, and just checked out some of the workshops they had, because I was hoping to go. But man, just to give our listeners an idea of some of the workshops that took place, there was stuff like austerity, debt, and fight for education funding, striking before union recognition, strike reviving labor's most powerful weapons, researching your employer for organizing and bargaining campaigns, organizing the South, union democracy in the building trades, and so on and so forth, man. These are looking pretty good. I'm glad it was well attended. I heard it was about 4,000 people. Could you?
It would have been more. They had to stop registrations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they put on one extra hotel, then they put on two more extra hotels, according to in addition to the Hyatt Regency, which is a union hotel. Great hotel. The workers there, super workers there. I tell you, they really helped me a lot in getting around and stuff like that. Um, it was a happening. It was a happening, and um, yeah. So I think it's an upsurge, and I don't know what it's like in your particular areas, but there seems to be whole lot of organizing going on around in this area up here in Boston. Seems like all kinds of places are organizing here. I don't know what it's like out there in Denver. I know in San Antonio, uh, I know that there are a few Starbucks uh, organizing out there. I don't know what it's like in Denver.
Yeah.
Do either of you sense sort of like a ripple or a wave going on, a little something going on in the atmosphere out there in the water?
I'm hoping, man. I know Denver Starbucks has definitely unionized here. I believe somewhere on Colfax Avenue. So shout out to them. But all that is inspiring. All this young blood in the labor movement again. It's kind of like Comrade Lenin said. There's decades where nothing happens, and there's weeks where decades happen. And I hope some of this energy, like you said, gives the labor movement a shot in the arm, a badly needed shot in the arm. Give us a little hope. Good Lord. So it's good to hear that there were so many people. It's good to hear that it was a good vibe. Jerry, were there any particularly large delegations that you noticed of anything, either socialist groups or
Sure.
workers from
I
a certain
think uh,
country or pride or anything?
I think DSA might have had as many as 400 people there.
Oh, wow.
They had 200 from New York, and they had about 40 here from Boston. So
Interesting.
nationally, a lot. Uh, Bernie Sanders' footprint was noticeable,
Okay.
especially in the Friday night big meeting where he spoke.
As in a lot of Bernie supporters?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I would think.
definitely.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, I think there was. I mean, it was all over the map. UE, IATSE, CWA, SEIU, Unite Here. I mean, everybody was there. I ran into a UE organizer that I hadn't seen in 35 years.
Oh, cool.
There, David Cohen, and we were part of the Labor Committee, Central America Labor Committee, for bringing Central America trade unionists around New England in the 80s. And I hadn't seen him since then.
Oh, wow.
So politically, there was, let me see, PSL was there, Socialist Party, Socialist, there's a new International Socialist tendency that was there. Who else was there? Oh, EWOC was there, Emergency Workers Organizing Committee, this joint collaboration between UE and DSA, which is just growing crazily. Recruiting volunteer organizers all around the country to throw us into nascent campaigns and help workers organize. They were there. Yeah. Oh, and PM Publishers. Have you ever heard of PM Publishers?
No.
They're on the West Coast. They had a huge um, book spread. I mean, it was like, 30 feet long, and they hundreds and hundreds of new titles, and lots of labor titles. They were selling books. That other union publishing company that recently republished Phil Foner's work was there. Haymarket Books, they were there. Um, Cuba Solidarity Committee was there. They didn't like the petition I was circulating.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Really?
So, yeah. So, Jerry, I got a question for you. Well, one of the phenomena I think we're seeing, especially with the Starbucks workers, and we've, talked about this previously, and we've seen this in places like, where we have this, we have historically, and I think present day agree and have seen, and it's borne by evidence that the more oppressed workers, Black and brown workers, women workers, LGBTQ workers we have, not only as rank and file members, but also as organizers, leaders in labor, organized labor, but also maybe those who aren't necessarily organized yet, is where we are the strongest as a working class. And I think what we're seeing a lot we're seeing this a lot in Starbucks and education sector and other places, the role of, in particular, women in leadership positions, as well as rank and file positions, from stewards on up to presidents, like Sarah Nelson. What was that like at the Labor Notes Conference? Did you see that phenomenon? And if so, do you have any comments about it?
Class character of
Women, the role of women in this
women were everywhere.
new phenomenon in the labor movement.
Especially in the Starbucks leadership, 80% rank and file leadership were women. Maybe 40% of the entire workforce is queer. For Sarah Nelson, I don't know if you've ever heard her speak. She's genuine. She probably gives the best basic speech that a labor leader could give. She has, I think, 25,000 members in her union. Delta is organizing; they're non-union, so she talked about them. I think I think women are moving into sort of numerical leadership at the level of rank and file and leadership. Not so much in the bureaucracy part of it, but in the rank and file or in the elected union leadership of it. Elected union leaders and rank and file, that's where you see a lot of women, strong women. There were also a significant number of people of color there. I would say maybe 5 to 8%, just rough guess. And I didn't go to any workshops that focused on Black struggle, but there were Black power struggle workshops there, definitely. The one was, I think, the impact of George Floyd on the labor movement. There were such workshops there. I just couldn't get around to them. I also had my own sort of physical limitations at the conference, getting around. So it was that.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's shifting. And I hear people talking about draft Sarah Nelson for president in 2024. That's what I'm hearing.
I got nothing against Sarah Nelson, man. And again, for some listeners who may not be familiar, correct me if I'm wrong here, comrades, but Sarah Nelson really came into prominence during the federal shutdown, the government shutdown, if I'm not mistaken, when she advocated for a strike amongst flight attendants right in the middle of the shutdown. And from the way I remember, from the way, I analyzed the situation, it was that threat in combination with TSA workers being unable to continue working that really brought the federal shutdown to an end. I don't know how you folks, how comrades feel about this, but that's how I remember it. And either way, she did advocate for that strike. And later on, I read or heard a couple of her speeches with DSA, I believe, speaking about a general strike. So yeah, Sarah Nelson's pretty cool people, man. I dig the things she's saying out there.
She mentioned that shutdown event in one of her speeches.
Cool.
It's a good example.
Others have mentioned that. I think maybe it was you, Brian, that mentioned this. I forget. that when you talk about the airline flight attendants and the Teamsters, you talk about two unions that could effectively shut down much of the economic activity of the country if they went on strike together.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's and that's why Nelson, a labor leader knowing the power of their labor power within a sector is quite vital.
Yep.
And if we, although our numbers are a little thin in the United States, it's important to, I think, remind our fellow workers every once in a while that we do control the docks. It might be different unions, the ILA on the West Coast and in New Orleans, but also the ILWU on the West Coast, sorry, the ILA on the East Coast, but all the docks are labor, both inland too on the Great Lakes, as well as the railroad networks, as well as the airline networks, and a lot of this and a lot of other transportation sectors and other sectors, education sectors, right? There's 5 million plus education workers combined as members of the AFT and NEA. We still have a lot of organized labor power in this country, and it's good to see. But it takes labor leaders like Nelson to remind us of that, how much power we actually have. So I appreciate that for laying that down. It's great.
Indeed.
They speak out of their own lived experience of power.
Yeah.
That it comes right across.
That's badass.
These folks know what workers' power is all about. They ain't afraid to talk about it and put it into motion.
That's right. That's cool.
All right.
That's cool.
Okay. So
All
our
right.
next steps, Jerry, are to help the Starbucks workers do everything we can, is what I'm hearing. So order of the day, Racine is on strike. UAW will local 180 in Racine, Wisconsin. They're on 8 weeks right now. We really need help with that. And so it seems that's the next steps coming from the conference, if I'm hearing correctly, to support the Starbucks workers, among other actions and activities that came up, Amazon workers, et cetera.
That's right.
Was there any closing resolutions at the conference, Jerry, or
Calls
There were no
back.
resolutions.
no? Okay.
I know the upcoming private work convention in Minneapolis in August. I think I'll be submitting some resolutions. Others, we always have a lot of resolutions at those conferences. So that's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that. Oh, there was a lot of UAW there, by the way, since you mentioned Racine. A lot of UAW informal caucuses going on. I think the recent victory of the one worker, one vote at the AFL-CIO at the UAW national conventions.
Mhm.
Yeah,
that's an important thing.
Yeah, no, that's good news. Thank you. I had heard about that in passing, but yeah, that is good news.
It turns out one of the newly organized Harvard UAW graduate workers union sort of spearheaded that. A young woman did that.
Oh, very cool.
And I met also a bunch of the MIT grad students who recently won a big election with UE up here in Cambridge of, I think, 4,000 workers. And they're going to get an additional couple of thousand in the fall in a supplementary election for other occupational titles. Yeah, so a graduate student union organizing is a real thing. I mean, it could be 100 to 200,000 of them in the country at different campuses.
Oh, interesting.
The UAW has more education workers than they do auto workers, I believe.
I think you're right.
Mm.
Wait, are you being serious? 'Cause I could.
I'm absolutely serious.
Of course they do.
This is U.S. labor,
It is. It is.
Just organize any sector you want.
Yeah. No, a grad school worker is kind of like a auto worker, except not at all. But
Hey, listen, we're all graduates of UMass Amherst. We know the UAW local there is pretty dynamite, 23, 24, right? And
this is true. Like, at least Brian and I were unionized grad school workers.
Yeah.
Jerry, what about you?
Oh, they didn't have that then.
Okay.
But in 1982, I think that I got the graduate student assembly to pay me $35 a week to try to organize graduate students, but nothing came out of that. But the UAW at one time here 3 years ago was organizing grad students at MIT. No, I'm sorry, not MIT. BC, Boston College, Boston University, and who am I leaving out? Oh, Harvard, the one that they actually won. Harvard. Now, only one of those campaigns turned out. The other two have sort of kind of pretty much gone away.
Mm-hmm.
But they had two UAW staff here, and that's all. I mean, those are, you're talking with those three, you're talking about 12, 14,000 workers. I mean, so I'm not surprised they only got one, but they got the one, and their first contract. And then there's the Harvard students. How did I leave them out? Harvard, yeah, I didn't leave it. Harvard,
Yeah, you had mentioned.
BU, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Uh-huh.
Well, and Jerry, any Latin American group of workers, any Latin American contingents that come to mind?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. They had a grand piano in the ballroom, and there was a worker, Mexican worker from the Electrical Workers Union in Mexico that was playing the Internationale on the piano. I mean, it doesn't exactly qualify as the contingent. There were international workers there. There really weren't, like, to my memory, there really weren't really solid international labor panels. I mean, I'd have to look at the workshop list to make sure I'm saying the right thing. I wouldn't say that international labor was the most foremost thought at the conference.
Okay. Okay, interesting.
A lot of music, though. A lot of labor union songs and workshops and sing-alongs and stuff like that happening there.
Yeah, no, hey, I would hang out and listen to a member of the Mexican Electrical Workers Union play the Internationale. Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Number one, because it's the Internationale, and number two, because it's a Mexican Electrical Workers Union. And man, they put up quite a struggle about what, like 15 years ago, I remember they were all over, some labor publications and whatnot. So hats off. That would have been a cool thing to see.
Yep. Yes, especially in view of the fact that the current president of Mexico, Obrador, is not backing down from his international relations with Biden around, I think, around the recent Conference of the Americas on the West Coast, where, as you know, he refused to attend out of solidarity with the delegates of Nicaragua and
Cuba,
and maybe a third. I don't know, but those two. I mean, that took a lot of moxie to do that, and I was very heartened to see that because, as we know, as I believe that Biden is extending some of Trump's executive orders around delaying hearings for internationalistas that are coming across who want protections. I believe that those courts, or that whole process, was gummed up by Trump and using an executive order for that. And I think Biden is still operating under it, I think, but certainly there's still a lot of crazy xenophobic hysteria about, the current group of international workers that are trying to get into the U.S. now. And our labor movement has not come down forcefully to help and show solidarity with those workers. They're all workers. All of them workers, and that is something that is in my Catholic upbringing a sin to just not to show solidarity with them. Yeah, this, I think you know more, you know something about this, Rick, the Mexican labor movement. It's important to understand these things.
Indeed.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for the report back, Jerry. Brian, any further questions from you, or?
No, I'd just like to say thanks, Jerry, for the report. And just one last appeal for the strike in UAW Local 180 and the one in Burlington, Iowa. We're both going out 8 weeks, almost 9 weeks on strike. And so check out their Facebook page, UAW Local 180. You can find out how to support them. Send them all kinds, you can send them things in the mail, online, drop things off at the union hall. These workers don't make much anyway. And they're almost been out there for almost almost over 2 months now. And they could really use the support. Please spread the word as well. And pass resolutions if you can in your local with monetary contributions attached or gift card contributions attached. That would be greatly appreciated. And thanks a lot, Jerry. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. So
Thank you,
yeah,
guys.
folks, thank you to our listeners. And to our listeners, we encourage you to check out Labor Notes magazine. You can find that online at labornotes.org. What's up there? You're giving me the signal.
And we are going to be posting on. Can you talk on our page?
Yep, that was yeah. And Jerry did a presentation, as you heard already, at the Labor Notes conference. There's a video presentation of that, which includes slides. So we're going to be posting that on our Facebook podcast page. So go ahead and keep an eye out for that. So without further ado, thank you folks for listening. It was great to hear back from you, Jerry. Yeah, really, really informative, and thank you. Until next time, everyone, thank you for listening.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.